Welcome to Where Parents Talk. My name is Lianne Castelino. Our guest today is an author and a speaker. Margot Machol Bisnow has spent 20 years working in the U.S. government and also previously founded a nonprofit organization. Her latest book is called Raising an Entrepreneur: How to Help Your Children Achieve Their Dreams, 99 Stories from Families Who Did. Margot is also a mother of 2 adult children, both of whom are entrepreneurs themselves. She joins us today from Baja, California. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my pleasure. Although since I'm down here, I should say el gusto es mío.
So, Margot, as we mentioned, you pivoted from a 20-year career in the U.S. government, including as staff director of the President's Council of Economic Advisors, to writing and educating people about entrepreneurism. Why did you choose to pursue this path?
My older son, Elliot, started an organization called Summit Series in 2008. The reason I'm in Baja is there's a big 1,200 young entrepreneurs at a Summit conference down here this weekend. And I just hadn't met a lot of entrepreneurs at that point. And I would go up to them when I'd go to his events and I'd say, I'm just so curious how you turned out the way you did, so willing to work so hard on something you believed in and take on so much risk. And they all basically told me the same thing. They all said, I had someone who believed in me, who told me I could do anything I put my mind to. Most of the time, that was a parent. And even more, most of the time, it was their mom. But not always. There are some people who had, a grandmother or a stepdad or a teacher or a neighbor, but not always their mom. But someone along the way always said, I know you can do whatever you put your mind to. I believe in you. And I was so struck by this, I just kept talking about it. And the kids said, you have to write a book. And I said, I can't write a book. And they said, no, you have to write a book. So they finally wore me down, and I decided to write a book. And they wrote the foreword, and they said, everyone needs someone to believe in you. Sometimes that's even your kids. Oh, so I had no idea what I would find. I picked 70 people, super diverse, half men, half women, every race, every religion, every socioeconomic background, born overseas, immigrant parents, Canadians, big families, small families, divorced, married parents. I mean, just every educated parents, parents who hadn't finished high school, whatever. And to my amazement, they were basically all raised the same. And I just got so excited about it. And as we were talking before, there's so many unhappy kids today. And it's so important to me to get this message out to parents about how to raise happy, confident, resilient, thriving kids.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, Margot, because I don't know how many people would make the direct correlation between a parent and how they're raising their child and potentially raising an entrepreneur. Like, I don't think we think about the parenting behind entrepreneurism. So how would you go about trying to explain that to somebody, especially in today's world where, there's more and more entrepreneurs, there's no doubt about it. And in the 2 years, your book came out in 2022, since your book was written, there's probably even more entrepreneurs because of the world that we live in. So how would you go about explaining that to parents who maybe were raised differently, don't believe and have confidence in their child pursuing going into business for themselves?
There's like 20 different things I want to answer. First of all, I would say to parents, your goal shouldn't be that your child ends up in a career where they can make some money and they're miserable. You shouldn't have as a plan, oh, my kid's going to spend 40 hours a week for the next 40 years doing something they hate. That's not a good plan. I would also tell parents, the world has changed since we grew up. When we grew up, you had to have good grades in all your classes. You had to get into a good college. You had to graduate. You had to get, maybe go into graduate school. You really had to get ready for a great job that would last you your lifetime. It's not that world anymore. And parents have to understand that if their child has a passion for something, if their child wants to do something, if it gives their child joy, that's great. And they should be happy for their child. I want to define entrepreneur. So for me, an entrepreneur is anyone who starts something. It's not just some guy with a job, with a for-profit business. It can be anyone with anything they've started that they believe in. My younger son is an entrepreneur. He started a band. My older son is an entrepreneur. He started a conference series. So I think it's really important when I talk about entrepreneurship, it's more just a way of thinking and a mindset. I also want to say you can't make your child an entrepreneur any more than you can make them an orchestra conductor or a doctor. You can create the conditions so that if it's a path they choose, they're sort of ready for it. But it's not something you can force. Of the 70 entrepreneurs in my book, only 5 have siblings who are also entrepreneurs. And in all 5 cases, they also have a sibling who's not an entrepreneur. So I think it's really important for parents just to understand that you can create the conditions that if that's the path your child wants, it's something that they'll be able to kind of launch their way into. And sort of the final answer to your question is, I think the biggest difference between entrepreneurs and people who go into other jobs is their attitude toward failure. If you're a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, you're very risk averse. You don't want to fail. If you're an entrepreneur, you understand that failure is how you'll learn and grow. I always love the Billie Jean King quote, "We don't call it failure, we call it feedback." And if you're afraid to fail, you're afraid to take risks. And if you're afraid to take risks, you can't be an entrepreneur. So all of these parents raised their kids so when the kids failed at something, they weren't scolded or punished. The parents said, "What did you learn? What would you do differently next time? Do you think this is something that you should change? Why would you change it? How would you change it?" They made them start thinking about. They didn't say, "You didn't hit the home run, make the home run. You ruined it for your team," or, "Oh my God, you didn't get an A in your class." Or, "Oh my gosh, you've really screwed up on this." Whatever. They didn't do that. And I just think if you want to have a child who will become entrepreneurial, it's really important not to scold them when they fail, but to let them experience that failure is how they'll learn and grow, and that you will be with them every step of the way. You're there for the inevitable setbacks. You know there will be setbacks. You support them, you're there for them, and you know they'll get there eventually.
So on that note, Margot, you talk about having parents create and support the conditions in which a child who wants to start something as an entrepreneur can thrive. What are some of those conditions? I think you've outlined a couple of here in terms of, embracing failure and those kinds of things. But from a parent's perspective, what do those conditions look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Lianne. Every entrepreneur I've spoken to had a passion outside of school. And in every case, their parents supported that passion. Sometimes it took a big gulp. Sometimes it wasn't what the parents had in mind. But when the parents saw how much joy their kids were getting from it, the parents were so proud of you for your success in that. And because it was a passion that the young entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs, had picked themselves, it was something they worked really hard at. Because they worked really hard at it, They learned grit and focus and determination. They learned the trade-off between hard work and results. They learned how to pivot when it wasn't going well. They learned how to recover when they failed. They learned how to, survey the course and figure out what they could do better. They learned all these incredibly valuable lessons that when they did become an entrepreneur, helped them. They became confident. They became confident not because their parents went in and asked their teacher to change a grade, or because everybody on the team got a trophy. They became confident because they learned that if they worked hard enough at something, that they could succeed. And they all learned these traits. A lot of them, it was sports. Not all of them. The ones who became artists, they started with that when they were younger. They started acting, they started singing, but they started directing, whatever. But most of them, what they do today has nothing to do with what they had as a passion when they were growing up, but it was the skills they learned and the support they got from their family.
So along those lines, when we talk about passion-based learning and we talk about how parents can cultivate passion in their kids for whatever it is, from the interviews you've done, from your lived experience, etc., what should a parent try to do to have a child discover their passion? So what does that look like? And then the other part is, what age should that begin ideally?
So let me answer the second question first. There's not an age. It's not a one size fits all. And several of these entrepreneurs had 3 different passions growing up. They wanted it, they did one thing and then it morphed and then they did something else and then it morphed and then they did something else. That's okay. Some of them, it didn't happen until they were in high school. Some of them, it happened younger. Very few of them were selling things or, being, quote, entrepreneurial, when they were young. I think 2 of the 70 had lemonade stands. How do you help them discover it? For me, this is the most important thing a parent can do. I believe every child is born with a gift. And I believe it's our job as parents to help them figure that out. And when parents tell me that their kid's in high school and they have no idea what their gift is or their passion is, I'm just like, you've never given them a chance to figure it out. You've had them so programmed every minute of their life that they never had that opportunity. What we did was we just wanted to expose them to everything. And if they liked it, they got to keep going. If they hated it, they had to finish the semester or whatever we'd paid for the summer. They couldn't drop out after 2 days. But at the end of the 3 months or whatever, this program was, if they hated it, they could move on. They didn't have to keep going. Both of our kids discovered what they loved when they were about 13. For my older son, it was tennis. And for my younger son, it was writing music. It was sort of serendipitous for both of them. My younger son, we'd signed him up for a summer of sports camps. He broke his leg the first week. Oh. I was looking for something for him to do. Everything was booked. I found this thing that included writing music on the computer. I'm like, you're going to this. And by the end of the summer, that was it. He wrote 300 songs before he graduated from high school. I used to say I feel sorry for parents whose kid doesn't give them a new song in their inbox a couple times a week. And I know you're in Montreal. He married a woman from Canada. He has a band, and they've started singing. His band is Magic Giant, but they've also just started singing together somewhere in between. And I know he's toured in Canada before, and I'm sure they'll be back. And my older son, it was tennis. He played every sport. At the end of one summer, there was a couple weeks with nothing to do. I said, oh, here's a tennis camp. he really liked it. He wanted to take lessons. The next summer he was running back and forth between baseball and tennis, and after that it was just tennis. And at that point, all the people who ended up top 100 in the country were already doing regional tournaments. We don't play tennis. We don't know anything about music. We couldn't advise him. He just wanted to play. He kept losing. He said, I know what I did wrong. I'll beat him next time. And he fought his way up to 35 in the country. And, I had these kids who were just doing something they loved 5 hours a day and 7 days a week. And it wasn't something that either of us knew anything about. But that turned out to be a good thing because they had to figure it out on their own. We weren't pushing something on them. And I'd go to these tournaments with the top 100 tennis players, in the country, the kids, and I was like the only one who didn't know the rules. So I think you just expose them to everything and you see what there is. My older son has a 5-year-old, and we were interviewing kindergartens, going around to kindergartens. And this one class, the teacher had all the kids write what they wanted to be when they grew up, and they had drawn pictures. And it was like, I want to be a ballet dancer. I want to be a carpenter. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a fisherman. I mean, all these different kids have this passion in them, this thing about them. And it's just our job to look, to pay attention. That this 5-year-old, he saw somebody like swinging on the rings. He's like, I want to do that, and then we were at a restaurant and people were singing and dancing. He looked for a minute and walked away. And I said, somebody else's kid is going to look at the people singing and dancing going like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. You have to look as a parent. You have to see what gives your child joy. And you have to tell them, by the way, you have to tell them, we're so proud of your success in that. And it's okay that you didn't get an A in trigonometry. When have you ever used trigonometry, right, Lianne? Mm-hmm. You have to tell them you're proud of their success and the thing that matters to them.
There's so much to unpack in what you just shared there, Margot, but I'd like to hit on a few points if I could. It strikes me as a lot of what you've just described has everything to do with the self-awareness of parents without even talking about the kids yet, right? It's like, are we as parents projecting what we think they should be doing on them, how we were raised, all of these different things. But as you know, parents have no shortage of things to worry about. And there will be parents out there who are helicopter parents, who are other types of parents who say, well, they don't know better and they need guidance. And this is the way I guide them, to give them a path that they could follow because I know my child very well. How do you, when you meet parents and you talk to them about this subject, how do you answer a parent like that with that kind of perspective?
Well, it's kind of what I said in the beginning. I would look at them and say, really, that's your goal for your child, that they should spend 40 years being unhappy? Really? And also I would tell them the world has changed. My dad was a professor. I grew up in university towns. I didn't know anybody who hadn't been to college. Half their friends had PhDs. I just thought that's the way the world was. So you can imagine when my older son announced after 2.5 years of college that he was taking a semester off. It's a big gulp. It's not something I ever anticipated. And I look back now and it was actually one of the smartest things he ever did. Because if he had spent the last 1.5 years not studying subjects that he wasn't interested in, he never would have started this organization Summit, which he actually started a month before he would have graduated. And if he'd stayed in school for another 1.5 years and then, started working and stuff and then become interested in entrepreneurship, the moment would have passed him by. Somebody else would have done it. The reason it's become such a big deal was when he did it, it was the first time young entrepreneurs had gathered together. So it really taught me a lesson. The world is different, and you just have to acknowledge that. And people say look at what all the biggest jobs are in the world now. None of these even existed. None of these companies existed when we were growing up. There was no NVIDIA. There was no AI. There was no streaming. There was no Instacart. There was no Google. There was no Microsoft. There was no Apple. There was nothing. None of the biggest companies in the world existed. And, it's not your world anymore. Let them go.
Absolutely. Certainly with those examples. Now, when you did your interviews for your book, were there any specific parenting methods that let's call them sort of unique or different that you ran into of these parents of entrepreneurs that really struck you?
I think what struck me the most is that no matter how different these families were, I mean, some had parents who were doctors, some had parents who hadn't graduated from high school, and no matter what, they all had a lot of expectations about behavior, about how you're part of a family, and how you show up for meals, and how you are polite, and how you help around the house, and how you're financially responsible. I mean, they all kind of had expectations about behavior, but they all gave them huge freedom and independence to explore. And I mean, some of them, they let them go overseas. They let them change schools. They let them, like big decisions. I'm miserable at the school. I can't stand it. I want to go somewhere else. Sure, go live with my brother's family in California for a year and go to school there. I want to go to Africa and work work with indigenous people or whatever. Sure, go ahead. I mean, so they gave them huge freedom on the big things, but in terms of expectations about behavior and responsibility and politeness and, not watching television or during the week or, whatever, like being there for the family dinners. They were, so in that way, they were all sort of similar, which really surprised me.
Could you give us a couple of examples of some of these families? Because you interviewed the mothers in all cases, as well as the child. A couple of examples that really, had an impact on you.
So I started out interviewing both, and then I realized that the stories were pretty much the same, but that in a lot of respects, the entrepreneurs themselves were more kind of open. The parents were more kind of protective. And so then I just interviewed the entrepreneurs for how they were growing up. So I didn't interview every parent. But I'd love to share a few stories. One would be John Chu, the movie director whose film Wicked comes out Friday, which I'm super excited about. His parents were immigrants. They have a Chinese restaurant in Palo Alto. And from fourth grade, he discovered, filming. He'd gotten a little movie camera, and on a vacation, he just fell in love with it. And it was like all he wanted to do. And he had a little company in high school, and he was filming people's weddings or whatever. And his parents thought it was kind of, weren't that enthusiastic. They wanted him to have it like a normal job. And so I think he was in ninth grade. He was supposed to be asleep. His mom came in. He was doing a movie on his laptop. And his mom's like, put that away and stop wasting your time. You need to get some rest. You need to be prepared for school tomorrow, which is really important. And he burst into tears and he said, you can't make me stop. It's what I love. It's what I want to do with my life. And she said, go to sleep. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And the next day she picked him up at school and she'd gone to the library and she had 10 filmmaking books. And she said, if you want to do it, be the best. And he said after that, his parents were like the most supportive. He went to USC Film School. He had a small film that he showed, as a senior, when he graduated. and which ended up getting him an agent, I think. And his parents were like, "Well, what are you serving?" He's like, "Serving," you know. So they all drove down from Palo Alto to Los Angeles to serve, you know, food and champagne to his. He said they were always just the most supportive people in the world. And I mean, you know, that was a big gulp for them. So I love that. I can tell you a beautiful actress who's Canadian, Emmanuelle Shrieky, and her she always loved acting, and her mother died when she was, I think, in high school, and her mother was very sick, and her mother whispered in her ear, she said, "You can go be an actress for both of us." And Emmanuelle said she's always carried that with her. These are both, of course, people who, you know, their passion from when they were young continues today. Most of them, as I say, their passion changed over time and sort of evolved. I would say one other example that I really love for a different reason. Most entrepreneurs, not the actors or musicians or whatever, but people who start something, it's because they got really knowledgeable about it, and then they realized something about it that could be done better. So, or differently, or changed, or added to, or improved. So there's this one, Joel Holland, whom I adore, and he was in high school. He went into the counselor's office to try to find out about different jobs. And he thought the information they had was just dreadful. So he wrote to a company and said, "Hey, if I can interview CEOs of different kind of businesses, would you fund it if I can get all these people?" And they're like, "Sure," because he said he was sure he couldn't do it. And so he started interviewing all these different people. And one of the people he interviewed was Governor Schwarzenegger in California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he said he realized it should have been a really interesting video, but it was just visually boring. And he thought, gee, if only I could have like the Hollywood sign or something behind that. And he realized that you just couldn't get stock footage. So he started a company called Footage Firm, I think, and started going around taking films of all these different places and putting it online. And he'd gotten into Babson, where he wanted to go to college, and he wanted to keep going. He said to his parents, "Can I please take a year off and just work on this?" They were sure. And so he went, and he was working on it part-time at school. And he actually was at that first summit that my son did in 2008. And he'd been getting these six-figure job offers from Wall Street. And he met all these other young entrepreneurs, and he thought, you know, if I can get a job offer now, I can probably get one in the future. He told his parents, "Turning down these job offers, I'm moving home, I'm working on my company." And they're like, "Okay, great, we love you." So he moved home, he worked on his company. Like 8 years later, he sold half of it for $10 million. He got an RV, he started driving around the country, and he realized there are all these fabulous places to stay, like wineries and farms and places he would have loved to have stayed, but the only places he could stay were these horrible RV parks. And he thought, there has to be a better way. And so he started this organization called Harvest Hosts. You pay $80 a year, you get like 2,000 places to stay, and you stay in any of them for free. And the people are, you know, welcome you because you'll probably buy some of their stuff. So he's now started two different things. And in both cases, it was because he got familiar with something, and then he saw something that was missing, or something that could be changed, or something that could be done better. So I love that.
I do too. The innovation and
always, you know, super supportive, even though sometimes it was a big gulp.
Absolutely. The ingenuity, the innovation, the ideation, it's very energizing, definitely. Margot, you are, you know, in touch with all kinds of parents and families still in the speaking that you do. What do you want readers of Raising an Entrepreneur to leave with?
Believe in your child, support your child, teach your child to be curious. Teach your child that failure is how they learn and grow. Teach your child that you'll be there for them no matter what. You support them, you love them, and help them find their path.
Lots of wonderful advice. Margot Machol Bisnow, speaker, author of Raising an Entrepreneur. Really appreciate your time and your insight today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Here's the book.
Thank you.